Okay, I'd like to call to order the public hearing of February 10th, 2020. It's approximately 7:15 PM. Mr. Christian, would you please call the roll?
Campbell.
Here.
Sensi.
Here.
Council Magno.
Present.
Gibbons.
Here.
Hannon.
Present.
Harrison.
Present.
McLean.
Here.
Maury.
Here.
O'Brien.
9 members present. Just for everybody's information, we have a public hearing that was scheduled at 7:10 PM. We're running a few minutes late. Following the public hearing, we will have our regular council meeting, so there's a chance we may be a little bit late starting that. This is for public hearing on application 2019-0707, conditional use to construct a monopole communications tower in the industrial park. An application has been made by Capital Telecom, conditional use, 5412 Enterprise Boulevard property, lot and block number 567K12, Capital Telecom Holdings, LLC, and Pittsburgh SMSA Limited Partnership. Applicant, current zoning is M, Manufacturing Light Industrial, which is in Ward 1. Just for everybody's information, the way this will start is Stacy Graff, our Director of Engineering, will give an overview of the project and what's being proposed. At that time, we'll open up to the applicant if they had anything they would like to add. Then we'll open it up to the public comment section. People are proponents in favor of the communications tower. Then it would be opponents, people that may be opposed to it. And then we'll open it up for any discussion from council. So Ms. Graff, can you please start with an overview of the project?
Before council is a conditional use application. The applicant, Capital Telecom Holdings LLC, in Pittsburgh SMSA Limited Partnership, DMA Verizon Wireless, is seeking to obtain conditional use approval for the installation of a new monopole, a tower-based wireless communication facility at 5412 Enterprise Boulevard. The property is located in Ward 1 and is zoned manufacturing and light industrial. The conditional use provisions of Bethel Park Ordinance are offered to be entered into record as Exhibit A. Copies of all exhibits are being provided to the solicitor and the court reporter. As per the requirements of the municipality's planning code, the purpose of this public hearing is to accept public testimony regarding the application. Council is required to hold a public hearing prior to the rendering of a decision on the conditional use application. Advertisements for the public hearing were published in the January 24th and 31st, 2020 editions of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. The proof of publication is entered into the record as Exhibit B. In addition, public notices were placed on the property under consideration on January 30th, 2020. A memo was prepared by Michael Hoffman, the code enforcement officer who posted the property, and is being entered into the record as Exhibit C. A copy of the application was also sent to the Allegheny County Office of Economic Development on September 11th, 2020, and is being entered into the record as Exhibit D. Notifications were sent to the abutting property owners prior to tonight's public hearing on the application by the applicant. Proof of the mailings were provided to the municipality and is being entered in as Exhibit E. Notices were also hand-delivered by Vince Kelly and Michael Hoffman, code enforcement officers, to each abutting property by the municipality on February 6, 2020. A copy of the notice is being entered as Exhibit F. 4 responses were obtained based on those deliveries, 2 in favor of the project and 2 opposed. These responses are being entered into the record as Exhibit G. The municipality of Bethel Park and Planning and Zoning Commission reviewed application 2019-0707 at their meetings on September 25th, 2019, January 2nd, and January 8th, 2020. The Planning and Zoning Commission voted 8 in favor and none opposed to recommend approval of the application. A draft copy of the meeting minutes is entered as Exhibit H. The applicant was made aware of of the Planning Commission's recommendation via letter forwarded to them on January 20th, 2020, and is entered as Exhibit I.
That's fine.
Pending the results of the public hearing, the next possible date for council's action on this application would be at their March 9th, 2020 regular meeting at 7:30 PM. The applicant waived procedural timing requirements as described in the waiver received by the municipality, signed on October 10th, 2019, and signed but undated letter from December 2019. These waivers are being entered as Exhibit J and K.
Okay, thank you very much. That's the overview. Would the applicant like to add any comments? If you could, come up to the microphone and state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. My name is Joe Perotti. It's P as in Paul, E-R-O-T-T-I. I'm here on behalf of the law firm of Siddick and Cortez, representing the applicants, Capital Telecom, as well as Verizon Wireless. Thank you, Ms. Graff, for that comprehensive introduction. As council is aware, we're here for a communications tower public hearing. I'm cognizant of the fact that there's a number of items on the agenda behind me, and so what I would like to do is be as brief as possible, just introduce a few exhibits and give a brief rundown to council as to the application. Briefly turn to my colleague, a radio frequency engineer, Mr. Shreyas Patel, for his testimony concerning just a few items in the ordinance that are critical in demonstrating compliance with the ordinance. But before that, Mr. Chairman, just for housekeeping matters, just to make sure that we introduce and have a complete record and comprehensive record, the applicant has 4 exhibits that they would like to introduce into the record. The first of which is, just for standing purposes, it's the lease agreement between the property owner as well as Capital Telecom to construct this facility. Would it be best to hand this to you or to the...
You can enter right up here. Thank you.
The second exhibit that the applicant would like it to be introduced is a narrative and corresponding exhibits. I believe 19 copies of this were provided to the municipality, but just to have the record neat and comprehensive, we ask that that be introduced as applicant's exhibit 2, the narrative and corresponding exhibits. The third and fourth exhibits that we would like to have entered, beginning with the third, is a letter, which is correspondence between the tower company, Capital Telecom, as well as First Energy. First Energy owns and manages a wire line, a tower within the area. It's a requirement under the zoning ordinance that we demonstrate that there's no co-location opportunities. So as Exhibit 3, the applicant would like to introduce that as correspondence between Capital and First Energy, demonstrating that that's not a co-location opportunity based on the reasons outlined in this letter. And the final exhibit, which we'd like to have introduced as applicant's Exhibit 4. When this application was originally submitted, right after the first Planning Commission workshop, I believe, the municipality hired an expert, the Center for Municipal Solutions, which is headed by Dick Comey and Rusty Monroe. They're specialists in the radio frequency field. They asked that the applicant provide a completeness analysis, and after that analysis was again reviewed by the municipality's radio frequency experts, the Center for Municipal Solutions. After they reviewed it, then they deemed that the application from a radio frequency perspective was deemed complete. So I'd like to have that correspondence introduced as applicant's Exhibit 4, the final exhibit. And so I realize that the application is comprehensive. It's one of the most comprehensive applications that I've been part of in quite some time. But as indicated, here with me is Mr. Shreyas Patel. He's a radio frequency engineer on behalf of Verizon Wireless. And just to his left is Mr. Scott Von Ryan. He is a representative of the tower company that is, as part of this application, to construct the facility for Verizon Wireless. And in fact, Mr. Von Ryan flew in from New Jersey this afternoon just to be part of this hearing. But again, just a brief overview Before we even submit applications like this, the first thing that all wireless providers do, we look to co-locate on an existing structure, whether it's existing communications tower, a water tower, a school, a hospital, a municipal building, anything of adequate height. That's what we always first to co-locate on. Not only because it's oftentimes easier from a zoning perspective, it's reviewed administratively, but also the FCC requires it. If there's an existing structure in the area, we are required to pursue those opportunities before constructing a new facility. Here, those opportunities simply don't exist. So what Capital did, as well as Verizon Wireless, they partnered to construct a new tower facility. It's proposed to measure 125 feet. It would be located on a 50-foot by 50-foot lease area and surrounded by an 8-foot fence that measures, or that has a foot of barbed wire at the top of it. And again, what I think is critical to this application is the fact that it's located in the correct zoning district, the M Manufacturing and Light Industrial District. So from a development perspective, it doesn't get any better than this site. It's not zoned residential, it's zoned M Manufacturing and Light Industrial, so it's considered a conditional use under the zoning ordinance so long as the objective criteria in the zoning ordinance are met. And as part of our exhibits, applicant's exhibit 2, we are very confident we've met the requirements over the zoning ordinance. But I think that there's 2 requirements that require expert testimony relating to the RF, the radio frequency analysis. So just for the next few minutes, I'd like to have Mr. Patel come forward, briefly go through a radio frequency analysis that should last no more than 5 minutes. At that time, we're confident with our case in chief, and then we can entertain any questions or concerns by council or also engage in public comment. But Mr. Patel, hold on one second. So you can go to the microphone. Can you state your name and spell your last name for the record?
My name is Shreyas Patel, Patel.
And Mr. Patel, who is your employer?
Verizon Wireless.
And how long have you worked for Verizon Wireless?
More than 7 years.
And in what capacity are you employed by Verizon Wireless?
Radio frequency engineering department for all my career with Verizon Wireless.
Sir, would you ask him to get a little bit nearer the microphone? Thank you.
He's a radio frequency engineer for Verizon Wireless. He's been with them for 7 years. And before you joined Verizon Wireless, can you briefly describe your educational background?
I have master's in electrical engineering from the University of Bridgeport in Connecticut, and I have all my experience in the wireless industry.
Okay. And Mr. Patel, we introduced, as part of applicant's exhibit 2, radio frequency propagation maps.
That is correct.
What exactly are these maps? Is this a sophisticated computer program that Verizon uses to monitor its network nationwide?
That is correct, yes.
And so the page titled Current Service Coverage Area, can you describe, in your opinion, what that page represents?
That page basically shows the computer modeling or simulations of our existing network coverage, what it is right now in the area. And it shows the different color in the threshold of the energy, what energy levels are there. So it is depicted with the different color scheme here.
So can you describe what each color represents, the green, the gold, and then the areas that I suppose are grayish or a white?
That is correct. So with the green, yellows, and grayish color, we have given the threshold value that's measured into the dBm values, which is the engineering standards. But just for the ease of simplicity and ease of understanding, the green means a good signal strength, yellow means a little less, and the greenish is very less signal strength. And we justify as green means we can have the in-building coverage.
In-building coverage.
In-building coverage. Yellow means we can have the in-car coverage, and the grayish means we can have the outdoor or on-road coverage.
Okay, so the area that's in the middle of the page, does that represent this proposed facility, the Capital and Verizon Wireless site?
That is the correct location that where we are proposing the new cell tower. And because we are seeing from this map, we can easily see that we have the less or minimal coverage in that area, and that is the reason for choosing that particular area.
And the colored polygons surrounding that proposed facility, do those represent existing Verizon wireless sites?
That is correct, yeah. The colored sites has been shown with the different antennas on it, and it's shown like a colored polygon.
And so, in your opinion, Mr. Patel, is there a significant gap in coverage where Verizon and Capital are proposing to construct this facility?
Yes, that is correct from this coverage map.
Okay. And briefly, Mr. Patel, just going to the next page. It's nearly identical to the previous page, but if you flip back and forth, the area where this proposed facility is located, it now looks like it's colored in green. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes. And that's the reason that because we are trying to show the board member what it would look like if we have this tower transmitting with this frequency on the same locations. And hence we have that area covered with the green now because it shows like we are getting the coverage being on that site.
So the second page, the future proposed coverage, this is a conservative projection of Verizon's network in the future if this site is on air and propagating a signal. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is the correct statement.
And there's one specific criteria in the ordinance that will require your commentary, Mr. Patel. It's related to the minimum height. Some communication towers, as you know, measure 125 feet like this. Others are 200 feet. We've even seen, some in western Pennsylvania, they're 600, 800 feet. So for this tower, why did Verizon determine that 125 feet is the minimum height necessary?
So every tower has its own requirement. Just an example, we don't need really 500 feet tower to cover the whole area because putting so will propagate everywhere and it will create the more interference to the neighboring structures or neighboring tower, cell tower, so to speak. So every tower, we defined or we determine the height of the tower based on all these calculations, like how far it's going to propagate, how much area is going to serve, are we going to get the requirement we are looking for in this area. We did our analysis and we submitted to board member as well with the two different height, with the 100 feet height propagation map and as well as the 140 feet height and 120 feet height. And we are saying like, okay, by going at 120 feet height, we are getting what the coverage, what we are looking for, and we are providing the coverage where we have the gap right now.
So 125 feet with Verizon's antennas at 120-foot center line, is that Verizon's opinion that's the minimum height necessary to meet its coverage needs?
That is correct statement, yeah.
Does Verizon propagate its signal consistent with FCC regulations?
Yes, FCC monitor each and every things that Verizon does, particularly with this radio frequency transmission. And we have our own compliance program in place to be always in compliance. So it is always in FCC regulation and as per the FCC standard.
Did Verizon identify any existing structures around the area that were co-location opportunities?
Not really, because we looked at, first thing we do is to find the co-locatable structure. We looked at a couple of rooftop possibilities, but being really low, about 40 some feet or less than that, we are not providing the coverage. And those even not into the area we are looking for, it is further from the area out.
Okay. I don't have any more questions for Mr. Patel. And really, we don't have any more witnesses. We stand by the application. So at this time, if there's questions from council or members of the public, we'd be happy to have Mr. Patel or someone else address those.
Okay, that's fine. We'll turn to the public comment section, and then if you feel necessary at the end, you could come up and answer any questions or anything. To back up, you gave me four different pieces of evidence you wanted to enter in.
Yeah.
I only noted 3 here.
You know what? The second one, so the first one was the lease agreement. The second one is the narrative and corresponding exhibits. It's this packet that's like
Okay.
80 or 100 pages.
Okay, let the record reflect that we already have a copy of the study that was done. I just wanted to make sure I had all the exhibits.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, at this time, I would like to turn to the resident comment section. Proponents, people that would have been in favor of this application. Hearing none, we have 4 people signed up to speak, and I'm not sure if they're proponents or opponents, but I would assume opponents. Francis and Mary McNulty. If you would like to come up to the microphone and please state your name and address for the record. And I apologize to everybody that our council meeting that normally starts at 7:30 will start immediately following this meeting, but we have a lot of information we don't want to rush through this, so we're going to put everything on hold. So can you state your name and address for the record?
Francis and Mary McNulty.
And if you could,
5563 Clarion Drive.
could you stand up at the microphone, so, thank you.
A couple of questions. We're saying Verizon Wireless, are we saying in that area that they're getting dropped calls? That's why they need increased coverage there. You mentioned a co-location on a, I believe, an energy site, and the general answer was that nothing was too high, but I didn't hear the specific of that the lawyer mentioned that site. Why are they not specifically at that site? I know it's in your documents in front of there, but they haven't said it. They haven't said that out loud. And what's the, you're probably going to do this anyway since you had 8-0 on the location, but is the ground actually going to support that for what there is? We've got enough landslides going on here, and how deep is that going to be, and is that area actually going to support that? I know they have standards and everything, but those standards are not taking into account the landslides we're getting here. See?
My concern, first of all, when I looked at Verizon Wireless's website and I looked at their map, I just looked at it now, it's all red. It's all great area. They don't show that there are any problems with cell phone coverage in our area, so I don't know why we need it. I also know that it's going to be, an obsolete technology. But more importantly, that's right in our sight line of the sunset on our deck. Our neighborhood has already suffered a problem with less, help me, with lower property values and resale values because of the landslide that my neighbors have, which was created by a faulty sewage line. We're not affected by that, but we're close enough that when we do sell our house, or if we want to sell our house, that will affect our property value. And if you're sitting at our house and you see a monopole, that's pollution. So if it's not necessary, if they still have this great coverage per their website, I just looked at it on my phone. It's all red, it's all good. If you really need to put this in this area, put it in somebody else's neighborhood, because we've already had enough done to our neighborhood. The industrial park is a great neighbor. Nothing is above the horizon, the tree line. So living in my neighborhood even with an industrial park very close, it's still a nice neighborhood. And I know it's not a fancy, big money, big houses neighborhood, but it's a neighborhood in Bethel Park. And I think that the council should be concerned about the quality of life that we have on Clarion Drive.
Just one more, just a sec. There seems to be around this area, most of the applications for sale would probably be going through Wi-Fi coverage in the house. Now, is there a commercial application that we're missing internet that goes to this tower, the necessity of bringing that there seems to be a ton of coverage, that what would matter for the resident is most of us are going to go to Wi-Fi by the time they get home. So what are we missing here? What's the gap in coverage, and what's the application? Thank you.
And again, my husband's being way too nice. I don't care if Verizon's having a problem. They can find another site that doesn't affect my quality of life. But thank you.
Thank you. Just for the question for our staff, this is the first application process to whether we'll allow it or not. Then they're going to have to go through a development phase. If it's approved tonight, the second phase would be like they're going to do a development. So just so everybody knows, this is just, if we're going to be acting on this later this evening, if we approve it, that means the next phase will go to a development phase, which will go back through the planning commissioner through our staff. If we don't approve it, it goes away and we don't know what's going to happen. Okay, is it Robert and Christine Powell?
Hello, my name is Robert Powell. I'm the building owner of 5409 Enterprise Boulevard, diagonally across from this proposed area. And a couple of things is, one of the things you do when you first look to buy a house or a piece of property, you kind of look around and see where the power lines and everything else. Nobody wants to live underneath one of those. And yes, there's none close to me, which is great. In our building, our Wi-Fi is fine, our cell phone coverage is fine. I don't really see where we need one. I also found within less than 200 yards of the proposed pole, a power line with a pole on it, with the cell phone or Verizon, whatever it is, up on top. And this is on,
That's on Logan. That's it, right at the end of our industrial park.
yeah, I don't know if you.
If you parallel Logan and Enterprise, it's right at the, right on those lines that are supposedly lines that cannot be shared, and they are already being shared.
Can you state your name and address for the record?
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Ryan Powell.
Okay, we'll enter these as Exhibit 5 and 6.
The other thing that we've heard too is R.E. Michaels, which is directly beside the proposed site, had a slight landslide this past year, and they've had to do some rebuilding.
They had to rebuild the back end of their building.
So they're thinking about, I imagine Verizon, whoever's doing this is looking at tearing apart part of that hillside and structuring it so. That's a concern. A couple concern is now you've got a 125-foot pole. Which direction is it going to fall? Is it a collapsible pole?
Is it self-collapsible, sir, or is it a directional fall?
I mean, it's,
Do you want me to answer the questions as they come in?
I would love that
Yeah,
question.
Could you please, if you could step at the microphone, if you don't mind.
So relating to the structural integrity, so communication towers are designed where they don't fall at the base like standing timber. If there were a catastrophic event, which I haven't seen, at least in southwestern Pennsylvania, what they're designed to do is bend at the approximately the 50% mark of the pole, and they sort of just fold over. Like, if you extend your arm and it folds over at your elbow, that's how communication towers are designed. But I think one thing that we have to be mindful of is that towers, they're designed to withstand elements that are common to a certain geographic area. So, for example, towers in the Gulf of Mexico are built to withstand hurricane winds. In southwestern Pennsylvania, they're constructed structurally to withstand elements that we see in southwestern Pennsylvania. But no, they don't fall like standing timber. And Mr. Powell also addressed the concern of the previous resident, Mr. McNulty, just relating to soils and concerns about landslides. Before any shovels are put in the ground, and I think that this information was already provided to the municipality, but we do a geotechnical evaluation, make sure that the soils are suitable, as well as a structural analysis of the proposed facility, where 3 or 4 wireless providers are on this facility, to determine whether structurally it can accommodate, the weight of additional antennas. So, but again, this is just for the use. I think as far as the permitting process and the land development, we can go over the geotechnical investigation, but those have been done in this circumstance.
what about the tower that's only 100 yards away, 200 yards away?
So the tower meets the setback requirements, and so that's.
No, I'm talking about.
We're talking about the tower that's
It's 200 yards
away from where you want to put this tower.
The one you addressed in one of your exhibits, the First Energy, I believe?
So I can probably defer to both of my colleagues in that matter. Mr. Von Ryan, you spoke with the individuals from First Energy, is that correct?
That's correct.
You can come to the microphone and state your name and address for the record, please.
Scott Von Ryan, Capital Telecom, 820 Morris Turnpike, Short Hills, New Jersey. We sent a letter to Diamond Communications, who is the company that manages First Energy's wireless facilities, and they wrote us back and said that those facilities weren't capable of handling additional antennas, and also there was not enough ground space to accommodate the radio equipment. So that is what our letter says.
There's a whole line of high-powered lines that go through there and poles that are on there currently. That are probably maybe 100-foot tall, I don't realize, it's kind of hard to tell how tall they are, which is probably more than the 125-foot you have at the lower end of that site. Why would you not use one of those poles?
Again, because they're currently not capable of handling the loading that's going to be required to put on this tower.
Would it not
We
be
also-
just to replace one of those poles?
That's not, it would be just as tall as the one we're proposing.
Yeah, but it's already on an existing power line, and not, it's already there. It's already there.
Again, we've contacted First Energy, and they've indicated. Well, you can see our letter, it's pretty clear.
The only other thing too, as far as the property owner, is typically you're close to one of those poles, your property value is gonna go down probably 15, 20%. Our taxes will go back and have to reevaluate our property taxes, et cetera. And to me, it's not needed. Everybody has come here and said, we have cell phone coverage. G4 is becoming obsolete. That's what this is gonna be used for. They're gonna attach everything else that's gonna be on top of it. I don't know, anything else you want to add, Brent?
Not really, besides the fact that we have perfect coverage. We have perfect coverage on this site. That's what we have trouble with, is they say there's problems on this site. I'm on that site 40 hours a week, 52 weeks out of the year, and I have never had a drop phone call 20 feet from this site.
Yeah. Might want to throw one other thing too, is I'm not one of these people that say it's gonna hurt people, but now we have two poles within 300-400 yards of 200 yards of each other. I mean, one pole they do the studies on, it goes, oh, no, it's no problem. But now you have two poles that are emitting the same kind of radiation. Is there danger here? I don't know. I'm not running around with aluminum foil hat, but.
But the signals are starting to go up a little bit.
But the signals are getting higher. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all for your time, appreciate it.
Just for the record, the electrical poles are between 85 and 94 feet high.
Okay, thank you. But you know what? They're even higher than that because they put their top on.
But when we're not close to the microphone on this comment. But if you look at the direct drop to where the location they're proposing is almost 40 feet below grade of where those poles are at. So we'd actually be above where, if we attach to the one pole that's on between Logan and, I forget all the intersections, the big intersection we all know about in that area that looks like a crash course going through it. In Irishtown. Thank you very much. I apologize. I drove it every day. If we attach there, we would be, from what the estimates there were on because I took my Garmin there, we'd actually be 10 feet above, using, with your math you just said, we'd be at about 130 to 140 feet above if we use one of those.
Thank you. Michael Zerns? Zervis, sorry.
That's okay. Yeah, my name's Michael Zervis, Z-E-R-V-O-S, 5417 Enterprise Boulevard. We're directly right across from the proposed tower.
Can you speak into the microphone?
Sure.
I'm sorry.
You want me to say that over? Are you
That'd
guys
be
good? Okay. So we're directly right across the street from the tower. So obviously I oppose the tower. I don't feel that the tower is needed for health, environmental concerns, the safety of the tower, the construction of the tower, and then also the visual pollution of the tower as well. Just to kind of give you guys a picture, the adjacent properties next to where this tower is going could be anywhere between 100 and 125 feet. So from where you guys are sitting, 2.5 times this room is where the tower is going to be from my building, from Powell's building, and from the other 8 or so buildings that are adjacent to it on all 4 sides, actually. That's pretty close to have a tower there. There is evidence as far as, and you could dispute some of the evidence as far as the health and different things like that goes with the radio transmissions and so on and so forth. But what you can't dispute is the closer you are to the tower, that there is a better chance that there could be some kind of health concern. And when you're 100, 125 feet away, depending on exactly where that tower is going on that property, you can't get any closer than that. So don't feel that the tower is needed. We have great cell capabilities there. Never had a problem with any calls or with any variety of different carriers. The property values obviously are going to become an issue. A lot of people are going to appeal their taxes. It's going to affect the county. It's going to affect the municipality. It's going to affect the school district. And that industrial park is a very tight industrial park. I mean, you guys all know that. It was an industrial park when they built that Dawsey and Lento so many years ago. The lots are 100 feet, so the buildings are very close. You can't even really get a tractor trailer in there without driving on someone else's property. So, it's really not, when you have these buildings this close, plus where this tower is going to go, if that building that's on that property, that 5409, I'm sorry, the one, what's the proposed address? 54, I'm sorry, 5412. That tower is going to go on that property. If that structure stays on there, it's going to be right next to that structure to begin with. So there's just a lot of concerns. We have a lot of concerns of property values, and we would just hope that you would oppose the construction of this tower for all of those reasons. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bill Wellman?
Good evening. Thank you for hearing us tonight, Council. So,
Can you state your name and address?
yes,
for
I'm
the-
sorry. My name is Bill Wellman, 5519 Claring Drive.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So, if any of you would like to stand at the intersection of Enterprise and Progress, you're going to find that a monopole is not going to accentuate a junkyard, boom cranes pointed toward the sky, trash around the perimeter of our neighborhood, or noise from the industrial vehicles that happen within 300 yards of our property. This property, this neighborhood, was here decades before that industrial park expanded right to our property lines. Now we have a monopole that's going to go in. That's not going to help anything. Things have already deteriorated for this neighborhood for years. I use the services and businesses that are within the industrial park, and there are good players in that industrial park. This monopole is not going to make things any better. The junkyards and the trash that's around that area is just going to make everything look worse, and we oppose it. So please consider those comments, and thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other opponents? If you'd like to come to the microphone and state your name and address for the record, please.
Hi, my name is Mike Bach. I'm working at RACO. We're basically across from that site. I would like to have a couple of points which you should consider. One thing is that the origin of the industrial park is basically a mining, was a mining company. So it's really underneath of that property is not very known. We have the construction of the new building which is going up at Industrial Boulevard. And I think they dug into some of the mine shafts and had to basically fill that up. So what's underneath of that property is something which nobody knows at this point of time. The other issue is that a couple of weeks or months ago, new antennas went up on the electrical poles, and so I'm not quite sure how much effort or how much you basically have spent to put antennas on these electrical poles. They're spread out throughout the whole boulevard, and yes, there are antennas on them, and they put new antennas on them a couple months ago, and there's enough space up there on other poles. We have a pole basically just next to our building, and so I'm not quite sure why we need a 120-foot pole, which is 40 foot down in a hole to do that. It doesn't seem right. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other opponents? Hearing none, I would like to open it up to council for any comments. Lori, Ms. Gibbons?
Is that a question in your paperwork? You have the coverage of the proposed site at 100 feet, 120 feet, and 140 feet. I had a real hard time differentiating between these three pieces of paper because the streets aren't very clear. It doesn't mean a whole lot to me, so I'm getting to the question of how high does it need to be? And the three maps you provided, I'm just not feeling really comfortable that I understand what you're gaining by the 100, the 120, and the 140.
Sure. So originally, when this application was submitted, the propagation maps that you just referenced, they were like 6 or 7 pages long, which is typical. Once the municipality's expert, the Center for Municipal Solutions, reviewed the application, what they asked for was greater detail as to what about 100 feet? What about other areas and so forth? And so what Mr. Patel's department, the radio frequency department at Verizon, did was address each of the concerns and questions that the municipality's expert had. And so do you know what page number specifically you're referencing?
They don't have page numbers.
Do you mind if I come up and take a look, and then I can have Mr. Patel flip to that page? Okay, Mr. Patel, Ms. Gibbons' comments, and I'll hold this up for the board. This page is titled Coverage of Proposed Site at 100 feet. As you know, Mr. Patel, what we're proposing is 125 feet with Verizon's antennas at a center line of 120. So addressing the councilwoman's concerns about 100 feet, can you please describe what that page represents in the 100-foot marker?
Yep. This 100-foot marker says, as I speak earlier, they are showing 3 different colors, like green, yellow, and another like a grayish color. So yellow colors means in-vehicle coverage, greyish color means outdoor coverage when you are on road, on street, and the green means when you are indoor inside the building. So it may not be exactly visible to you. There is a different changes in color scheme. You will see that there is a two page, but when you look at those two and compare those two, there is a significant areas where we have the coverage improved indoor as well, not just the outdoor. We are improving the indoor coverage. As long as if you look at the 140 feet high, we are definitely improving more areas with the indoor coverage, no doubt about that. But as I said earlier, like I don't need to go 1,000 feet high or 500 feet high. We do a detailed study, including all the existing building, all the maximum possible foliage in the area, try to come up with the best scenario that we can get, but best solutions we can get at the minimum height. And for our study and indicating and looking at all those things, we form somewhat comfortable, like, okay, going 120 feet will justify our need in this area.
Yeah, I don't doubt that you did all this study, but I'm telling you that I'm looking at this map, and I can't see a whole lot of difference. To me, it would have made sense to have like an overlay, 100, 120, 140, just to understand the difference in the height as to how that affects the coverage. So
we can definitely certainly provide that if it is required from the board member, but I thought providing this way, and it was the asked by the RF expert of the township, so hence we provided this way. But
no,
we are happy to provide whichever
I'm just
way
telling you,
board
it's
member
not
likes
helpful.
us to go through.
Yeah,
but,
it's just not helpful to me.
But
So
I think we did all this study, and if you just flip the pages, you may be able to see some changes, though.
I've been trying all day to do that. I've been
Okay.
flipping back and
Thank
forth,
you,
and
ma'am.
that's
Okay.
why I'm raising the question that it's really hard to do any kind of judgment of this based on this. I mean, I have this, and I tried to read this, and I sort of understood, but it's.
Yeah, I mean, if there's anything we can address,
Yeah.
you know, Mr. Patel's, you know, we'll make him available. I think that's why, even before we went in front of the Planning Commission a second time for their recommendation, the municipality put the brakes on and said, let's have the Center for Municipal Solutions look at it. And so what we were trying to do is address their questions and concerns. But again, Mr. Patel's here for any other questions or comments.
Mr. O'Brien.
I guess I have a comment. I have a comment and a question. First of all, it's nice that you bring your people from out of town because this is an application that you want. Just, excuse me.
No, I'm good. I can't hear you when you're talking. Go ahead.
And my comment is that you have to understand that you come in here and you apply for this tower and then you leave. All these people here tonight, they live here, they work here, They get in their cars today, just like you came here. They drive down here, and they're just as represented as you. So have a little consideration with that when you come on and you say, well, we brought somebody in from New Jersey. You brought them in from New Jersey for your benefit, not for ours. Okay? Second of all, you brought up the lease tonight, and you sent the lease to us. So you brought the lease up as a question. I guess I have the question for the lease. Is your lease being paid a monthly fee towards the property owner, or are you paying them based on a percentage of the leases off the tower?
Mr. Counsel, I mean, you know I can't answer that question. That's confidential. You know that.
Okay, I'm allowed to ask it. Thank you.
Sure.
Mr. President,
Mr. Campbell.
I understand the aesthetics aside. We've heard property value from some of the public comments tonight. We've heard about visual appeal or lack thereof too. As a doc and as a ham radio operator myself, I get a little bit of understanding as far as the radio frequency. I don't claim a lot, but I have enough. I'm not aware of a lot of health hazards, and we've heard that a couple times, not only in the written comments to council, but also we've heard a couple tonight as well from the microphone. Health consequences of a 4G network. Now, from what I understand, we're covered with it across the nation. 5G has a different frequency, a much different frequency, and much higher risk across the board. Can you comment about health consequences, please?
We're precluded by law, by the Telecommunications Act, from commenting on health concerns in zoning hearings. That's applicable to quasi-judicial proceedings like this, as well as in a court of law. But one thing that I can state is that 4G towers, they're not going away. That technology is not going away. What will complement it is 5G, and one of the critical applications of 5G, which is in development right now, is that if you're an individual with a pacemaker, your 5G network will keep your pacemaker in rhythm. And so the World Health Organization has looked at this. The American Cancer Society has looked at this. There's just no evidence to suggest that there's any health concerns relating to radio frequency exposure.
Thank you.
Okay, I have probably not a lot of questions, but a lot of comments here. I guess number one is I'm not convinced at this point. I mean, you showed us some information tonight of an email you got that, did you really look at other areas? I'm not comfortable that you really did exploration other than based on the comment we had at the last meeting. You supplied us an email chain, which unfortunately we have tonight, and not all of us are going to get a chance to review it. So I don't take a lot of credit in that report.
I think it's tantamount to proving a negative. If there's not a tall structure in the area, how can we say that there's not a tall structure in the area other than
You've created your own demand. You haven't, I mean, you give us these maps with all these colors, 100, 125 feet. That's going to be 30, 40 feet bigger than anything else in the area. So you have to understand, I'm commenting, I'm not here to listen to you. Last time you came here, the applicant said they had the best and only location to put the tower. Well, that didn't work out, so now we have another best location to put the tower. I don't necessarily buy that. I think the website coverage, when you look from a sales perspective, everything from Verizon looks good, the coverage is great, there are no holes, very inconsistent with the map that you're showing us. The fall zone you brought up is, let's say hypothetically it's 65 feet. I know the fall zone, and I'll call it a fall zone, if anything's to happen, it collapses in half of that's gonna go in an area, it's gonna be on at least one, possibly two buildings, so.
That's not true.
That's also a concern of mine.
That's not what I said.
I'm not here to argue with you. The next is you supplied a lease agreement, which obviously you said you're not gonna share with us. Just for the record, there was redacted information from the lease agreement. So by presenting it, I think is being disingenuous to us and to the public. You show you have one, but there's redacted information on there.
Well, that's privileged information, Mr. Chairman.
I said it was redacted. I don't care what it is. You show us a document in good faith, you don't have all the information. It makes me wonder what type of contract it really is. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, go ahead. I just, overall, I don't agree with, your logic with the height of it. I don't think you've provided to me enough information, quite frankly, that you really have done your due diligence. You designed the height of a tower, then you looked around and said, there's nothing else here, so I'm very concerned on that. Are there any other comments? Mr. Consolmagno?
Mr. Maury, this letter that you provided us from Orzeo Russo, is this the first time we've seen this document? Okay. I'd like our consultant to review this because it's probably not worth the ink that it's printed on because I don't see any certification that this individual has the knowledge to say that the towers that we're speaking of, that Mr. Powell and brought up about attachments, that there's a tower up there currently now that has 5 antennas around it. Now, that tower might not be able to support what you're referring to, but there's others that are along that line that are probably higher than the elevation that you're proposing. So I want our consultant to refer to this before we make any recommendation.
Okay, is there any other discussion? Hearing none, could I have a motion to adjourn this public hearing?
So moved.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
The public hearing will be adjourned.